Hi folks, welcome to this video on the World Class Performance Pathway or the World Class Performance Programme, WCPP, whatever you would like to call it. So this really is the big topic about how do we turn good, talented performers into elite medal winners. What are the plans we've got in place in the UK for doing that? And as you can probably see by the emblem here, this World Class Performance Pathway, World Class Programme, is run by UK Sport. And the key thing to remember is they only work with elite performers. This is not an organisation raised at increasing grassroots participation. It is, of course, interested in that because you need to get the next generation of talent coming through. But they work with the next generation by the time they're making it to very high standard performances. Okay, so World Class Performance Programme is run by UK Sport. What else can we say about it? Well, it's mainly comprised, everything it does can be summed up in 3 words. And they're the 3 words that pretty much sum up the World Class Performance Programme: talent, development and podium. So identify the athletes who have the potential to progress. Like I said, these are going to be working with the potential elite performers. Okay? Then develop them. Fund them, develop them, give them support so that they can fulfill that potential, and then finally get them on a podium. Make sure they win things. Okay, so if you ever ask the question like 3 or 4 marks, what is the World Class Performance Pathway? Those are the 3 things, coupled with the fact that it is run and organised by UK Sport. Now, seeing as we've mentioned funding, where does UK Sport get its funding from? Well, it gets money from the National Lottery and the government. Now, this is the thing. We need to see a return for the money that we spend on our athletes. Why? Because this is our money. We buy the lottery tickets, we pay our taxes to the government, and our government redistributes the taxes as they see fit. So either way, whichever pot it's coming from, this is our money. Hence why we can't fund sports that are underperforming or sports where we're never going to win anything, because we need to see a return. Now, it might sound a bit brutal, and we're going to look at the pros and cons of that in a few minutes, but that's ultimately what's taking place within this World Class Performance Programme. Once UK Sport has these 2 pots of money, what then happens is it then decides which national governing bodies are going to get however much money to achieve at the next Olympic Games. So they will then redistribute the funding amongst the national governing bodies. And finally, just a few other things that UK Sport does as part of the World Class Performance Pathway. It hosts world-class events. Coming back to these things here, how do you know that you're developing the talent and is going to finish on the podium? Well, you need to put your talent up against the world's best. So bring some of the world's best to our country, the likes of Usain Bolt, to see how British sprinters compare. We also provide our athletes with world-class sports science, but also it's not just about developing the athletes. We need world-class coaches to develop world-class talent, or else it's not going to work. So there's a lot on that. Unfortunately, this topic's only going to get more and more in depth. But if you've got to look at what's on that slide and go, right, however many marks come up as a question, here are the key things that UK Sport do. Okay, now what we're going to look at is just work on this bit a little bit. What happens, or what do the national governing bodies do in order to secure funding from UK Sport? So the money from the lottery, the money from the government, how or who decides how much each national governing body is going to get? So let's have a look at that now. Now, here are a few of the national governing bodies that UK Sport will fund. By no means all of them, but what I'm trying to say is if you look, there's no FA, there's no RFU, there's no RFL. This is about your typical Olympic, Commonwealth, sports, things like that. Those where there isn't a lot of individual money, do you know what I mean? A lot of these performers in these sports get funding, but they don't, they're not on £200,000 a week as some footballers are and things like that. So it's a lot of your Olympic sports that we're talking about, and their national governing bodies. So in order to get funding from UK Sport, here's what has to happen. Each of these organisations has got to produce a whole sport plan. Now, not by accident, a whole sport plan is 4 years. A 4-year plan, because that's exactly how long an Olympic cycle is, as I'm sure you're aware. Saying how many medals this national governing body, rowing, sailing, gymnastics, etc., is going to win at the next Olympics. In which events, who's going to win them, how they're going to go about developing this talent, etc., etc. Now, based on that plan's feasibility, that's what affects UK sports' decision to fund them or not. They could say, to rowing and sailing and cycling in particular, you've got a great track record of winning medals. If you say that's doable and you need £32 million to do that, there you go. Okay? Whereas swimming didn't have a great London 2012. British weightlifting did okay. British gymnastics did better than expected. Okay? So sports are going to get funded based on the ability to do that. That whole sport plan will also say how they're going to develop clubs, to increase participation. Remember, we're trying to win gold medals, but we haven't got the world's biggest population. We haven't got a massive population to pick people from. So we've got to try and get more people involved in sports so we've got more people to select from. That starts with getting more clubs out there, and along with that, develop coaches. No good having loads of clubs if we haven't got people to coach at them as well. Okay? As you'd expect, with national governing bodies, they've also got to develop talent ID programs, how you're going to spot the talent, and then those that they feel are good enough, they'll nominate them for the World Class Performance Pathway or the World Class Performance Programme. Okay? UK sport will only intervene and coach and work with the athletes who've been put forward by the national governing bodies. Okay, but the national governing bodies will only get funding if they've got a lot of potential world-class performance pathway performers coming through. So it's in their best interest to develop the talent and be honest and say these ones are capable of winning. And they obviously also receive funding from the UK sport based on the feasibility of their whole sport plan. It's up to them to then spend that money wisely and win us medals at the next Olympics, next World Championships, or whatever it is. So that's the role of national governing bodies within the World Class Performance Pathway. We're still talking about the World Class Performance Pathway. This is how it all works. So moving on, and it might seem like we're flipping from one thing to another. This is the problem. I think this is the issue that many people have with the World Class Performance Pathway. It isn't one thing, it's many different things all going on together, working side by side. Still part of the World Class Performance Pathway, still run by UK Sport, is the English Institute of Sport. Anyone watching from Wales, you've got a Welsh Institute of Sport, there's a Scottish Institute of Sport, and there's a Northern Ireland Institute of Sport. So I'm going to stick with the EIS, because it's the one I've got most familiarity with, but the answers that I put down here are applicable to all of them. Okay, so what can we say about the EIS as part of the World Class Performance Pathway? Well, it's run by UK Sport as part of the World Class Performance Pathway. Okay, and let's get the rest of it down in one go. The EIS have several hubs, 9 or 10, located around England. Okay, dotted all around the place, usually in highly densely populated areas. The classic stat is, an hour away from 1 million people, half an hour away from 250,000 people. If you are nominated by a national governing body to go on the World Class Performance Pathway, you have to locate or relocate to near one of these regional hubs so that you've got access to all of the following. Access to high quality coaching, high quality facilities, sports science or strength and conditioners, psychologists, nutritionalists, but also sports medicine, physiotherapists, rehabilitation, things like that. The reason you've got to relocate is so that you can get your lifestyle funding. Now, this is one of those little things where just the way our country's developed sport and the grip that we've gotten in terms of the old amateur and the old public school boys and things like that, a lot of our athletes are still technically amateur, i.e. they do not get paid to play in athletics and swimming and sailing and gymnastics and things like that. So, in order to raise the standards, they can get lifestyle funding, which is like a salary but isn't called a salary. It's money that they can access to pay for transport, accommodation, equipment, etc., so that they can train full-time or at least part-time, so they don't have to work full-time and then do training on an evening, which is what they used to have to do, hence why we used to get smashed Olympic Games and Commonwealth Games. We're up against other countries who have their athletes training full-time. No wonder we were getting beaten all the time. Why have we done so well in London 2012? Well, because we turned that around a little bit and said, look, if we want to win medals, we've got to fund these people from the start. Okay? But only those people who are on the World Class Performance Pathway can get the lifestyle funding. If you're not on it, you don't get the funding. And you might have read many stories in the papers and in the press about athletes who have had their funding withdrawn because they haven't performed. Okay? It's brutal. But there's only so much money and we can't throw money at people who aren't going to win because, like we said, it's our money. It's lottery money, it's government money, but it's our money. Okay? So we also mentioned talent ID and development programmes as part of the world-class performance pathway. This is what the national governing bodies are doing. But again, as you can see, look very carefully, UK Sport, EIS, these two could also have these emblems on them. It's all part of the same programme. So these talent identification programmes then, what are they aimed at doing? Why have them? Well, why have them is because of a point of I said earlier on. We don't have a big population in comparison to many countries. So we'd have a big population to select potential Olympic medalists from. So we've got to make sure we're getting the talent in the right places. What do these talent ID programmes have in common then? We've got Pitch to Podium, which as you can see here takes talented team sports performers, footballers, rugby players, things like that, but maybe who aren't going to make it, and turns them into, hopefully, Olympic medalists. Do you have what it takes to be an Olympian? Darren Campbell there, prime example. I believe it was Portsmouth he used to be a winger for, okay, but under his own admission, his coach's admissions, wasn't going to make it as a footballer, very, very quick, but didn't have all the ball skills, so he transferred over to athletics, and he's an Olympic gold medalist in the 4x100 metre relay. He's an individual silver medalist in the 200 metres from the Athens Olympics. We've got Girls for Gold, a programme that specifically targets female performers, and we're going to look at Lizzie Arnold in a second as a specific example of that. And you've got Sporting Giants. I believe it's if you're over 6'3" in male and 5'11" in female, you're eligible to go on Sporting Giants. So let's have a look at what they all do. All of these talent ID programmes have widespread testing of their performance. Where are their strengths? Where are their weaknesses? They have high quality coaches and scouts excuse me, to help them do that. What they then do with the results of these tests is produce databases. Okay? Power level, strength level, stamina, speed, lactic acid levels, VO2 max, etc., etc. We then have a high level of coordination between the national governing bodies. And we also run structured competitions to see how the talent is doing. Now let's look at Lizzie Arnold. Now she was a talented heptathlete, so she used to do the same sport as Jessica Ennis. But I think under a coach's admission I read somewhere, probably wasn't going to make it to Olympic medal standard. She went into the Girls for Gold Talent ID programme where they did some testing. They put all of their results on a database and said to all of the national governing bodies, would this girl be more successful in your sport? The Winter Olympic team saw her, and I think it was the power levels that they were really interested in, because the push starting skeleton is very, very important. And they took her, and 6 years later, she's an Olympic winter gold medalist. So, it's taking the talent that's out there and getting into the sports where it's going to win medals. It might, she was doing a sport where she potentially wasn't going to win a medal, using these talent ID programmes that allowed her to transfer. Helen Glover, who won our first gold medal at London 2012 in the rowing doubles, she was a PE teacher, 6 foot tall, she's a PE teacher, I was a PE teacher, went into the Sporting Giants, said, could I make it as an athlete? Leverage long levers is very important in rowing. They looked at her, they did some tests on her and said rowing could be a good sport for you. And again, 6-7 years down the line, she's an Olympic gold medalist. So it's taking the talent that's out there and trying to get it into the right sports. And it's worth repeating, national governing bodies do these talent ID programmes and share database and get athletes in the right places based on this world-class performance pathway, this world-class performance programme. So we're still talking about that. There's an organisation we've not mentioned yet, but they play a key part, even though they're their own individual organisation. Just tucked to it at the top there, Sport England, okay? As you can see, lottery funded, they've been inspired by 2012, okay? What is the role of Sport England in all this? Because they're not in competition with UK Sport, they collaborate with UK Sport, they work with them, okay? Now think back to something you might already know about Sport England and 3 words that sum them up. Well, their tagline, their banner is Start, Stay, Succeed. So where do they differ to UK Sport? Well, remember UK Sport only work with the elite, those who are succeeding. Whereas Sport England's job to also work with the elite and, highlight them to UK Sport, but also to get people start playing, keep them playing sport. So they are concerned with grassroots participation. So UK Sport, we couldn't do it without both of them. Sports England, get the kids playing sport, get them to keep playing sport, and get them become talented performers. In which case the national governing bodies take them on and UK Sport take them on and develop that talent into podium places and medals. So they do work well with each other, okay? So what else does Sport England do? So their job, their role, increase school participation rates, get the kids started, link the talent with clubs, so get them to keep playing the sport. Remember the big problem we've got in this country, post 16 dropout. Talented kids quitting the sports at 16 when they leave school because there's no opportunity to participate in sport anymore. They also support national governing bodies in the production of the whole sport plan that we mentioned earlier, that 4-year plan to win medals. And remember, it's all irrelevant if you haven't got the coaches to work with the young talent as well. So we've got to develop high quality coaches. So that's Sport England's role within the World Class Performance Pathway, the World Class Performance Programme. Getting close to the end now, you'll be relieved to hear. I get this is a lot of information. The point is you could get questions on any one of these organisations, or you could get questions on the structure of the World Class Performance Pathway as a whole for a very large number of marks, in which case you just put everything down that's on this little presentation that we've gone through. But just quickly, last couple of things. British Olympic Association, fairly straightforward. Do what you would expect them to do as part of the BOA. Well, where does the BOA fit into this? Remember, the aim of the World Class Performance Pathway and Programme is to win medals. The British Olympic Association take those athletes who have qualified for the Olympics, so those who've been through the World Class Performance Pathway and now qualified for the Olympic Games. That's Summer and Winter Olympics, okay? They provide them with world-class medical care in the build-up to the Olympics. Now you've got them there and they've gone through the rigmarole of qualifying, you've got to keep them fit. But what else do they do that maybe UK Sport can't provide as well? They'll provide really good training advice on periodisation. How are you going to peak for that day, that exact event where your final is taking place? Okay, they'll also provide sports science support and also world-class coaching. So again, the BOA play a very important part in the world-class performance pathway, but they've got their own little unique area that they need to focus on. We've mentioned a lot about coaching. You know, we've emphasised the point that it's no good developing all this talent if we haven't got the coaches to coach them. So part of the World Class Performance Programme is also to develop and work with a company, an organisation called Sports Coach UK, or the National Coaching Foundation, in order to develop the best coaches in the world. So their aims are the following. As you'd expect, the role of Sports Coach UK is to boost the quality and number of coaches in this country across all sports. So they work closely with national governing bodies and UK sport in order to do that. And they also produce coaching manuals for people to look at. They provide workshops and seminars. They will fund research into the latest coaching techniques and strategies. And they also provide websites with session plans. Log on to their website, have a look, you'll get some ideas yourself on different coaching sessions to run. It's all about sharing best practice, doing good ideas in order to improve the quality of coaching, therefore the quality of performers we have in this country. And that is a hell of a lot of information. We've got one more thing to look at, okay? And it's how do we fund the athletes throughout this system, throughout this process. The question has often been in this country, how do we get them to perform if we're still keeping all this amateur tag? If we can't give them a salary or a wage, we've mentioned the lifestyle funding, which we're going to mention again now. But what other funding can performers attract or get hold of in order that they can train as much as they can without getting distracted by work and other commitments? So we'll have a look at that list now. There's my attempt at some awful bullet points. But the point is this, okay? What can you get? You can get something called a sports aid grant, £500 to promising 11 to 18-year-olds can pay for transport, accommodation, equipment, things like that, okay? As we've mentioned, via the National Lottery and the World Class Performance Pathway, you can also get lifestyle funding. Only those athletes who are eligible, are on the World Class Performance Pathway are eligible for that. We can also get TAS, Talented Athlete Scholarship Scheme, TASS, £3,000 now, up to the age of 24. Again, if you're on the World Class Performance Pathway, that goes up to 35 years of age if you're disabled. The reason being, sadly, the fact that some people have disabilities anyway, but a lot of people don't get disabled until later on in their life. You know, think of the servicemen and women in Afghanistan, very fit people who've suddenly had, lost limbs and things like that. Don't let that talent go to waste. Get them playing sport. It's a good rehabilitation tool, but also they could represent Team GB at the Paralympics. But also common sense, where else do they get funded from? Well, parental support, we're all relying on it. We still all borrow a tenner off mum and dad every now and again when we need to. But part or full-time work as well is something that some athletes still need to do. Remember, not all performers are on the World Class Performance Pathway. you've got to prove yourself. And sometimes you've got to work and train very hard and prove yourself, and then you're eligible for world-class performance pathway funding. And finally, your own individual sponsorship deals that you strike up with sports companies or whoever else, etc., etc. So what we've covered there is everything that is under the world-class performance pathway, UK Sport, and all the organisations that work under that umbrella title of world-class performance pathway. Hopefully you find this useful. And remember, you could get a big question on all of it, in which case you mention everything that we've done on it in this little video, or you could get shorter answer questions on the EIS or on the British Olympic Association, in which case you just put those relevant parts on. Hope you found it useful, folks.